This is Breaking the News. I'm Jana Shortle. So over the weekend, the state's DFL and GOP conventions came and went with the nominees for the parties being kind of expected in some aspects. But one part of the Republican convention is getting a lot of pushback today. It was a moment of silence for the man who murdered George Floyd, Derek Chauvin. Ken spent all this all day, has a lot to tell us. Ken?
Now, Jana, the state Republican Party made it clear to me today that leadership did not support this motion and that it wasn't part of the official program. So we wanted to know how it happened. I spoke to Representative Danny Nadeau about that very thing. Now, he was presiding over the convention Saturday morning before he says nearly half of delegates had arrived, and most in the media hadn't either. In fact, we can't find video of what happened next, but he confirmed that a moment of silent prayer did happen at the prompting of one delegate.
This particular delegate, and I don't know his name, the delegate stood up and made a motion for a moment of silent prayer for Derek Chauvin. He came up and stood in front of the podium and asked if he could do it, and I recommended at that point that he not, but it's his right to be able to do that, as it is any other delegate at that convention, and so he did. And the motion was not out of order. It was seconded. I put it to the body voted, and we took a very short moment of silent prayer for Derek Chauvin.
How would you have voted?
I'd prefer, I would like say, who would I prefer for governor? And as a co-chair, I have worked really hard to be, nonpartisan, I guess, in this. And so, I don't think that matters. This was not a party function. This was not on the agenda. This wasn't a planned thing. It was a motion that was brought by a delegate at that time.
But it wasn't just one delegate that voted this through and observed this moment of silence, correct?
That is correct. And again, the nomenclature is important. It wasn't a moment of silence. It was a moment of silent prayer. And that, I think, is important. I've never heard of anyone, justifying the fact that, that George Floyd was murdered. And I believe in our justice system. And I think our justice system, worked in this case. A jury of peers, they weighed the evidence, they addressed the facts, and they brought an adjudication.
Do you wish someone had stepped up to at least push for clarity or to push back a little bit then?
I do.
Now, since that interview, which took place this morning, a man claiming to be the delegate who made the motion took to YouTube to clarify exactly what he did. Now, his name is Christopher Rocco, and despite what you just heard from Representative Nadeau, he made it clear that he does dispute what happened in court.
Derek Chauvin and the four other officers were innocent, and their voices have been lost, drowned out by the cult of the Minnesota DFL. I brought the motion so that hopefully it sparks a conversation on injustice.
And Rocco went on to show a sign that he held up, he says, at the convention calling on a federal pardon for Chauvin and a state retrial. And that is certainly sparking a conversation for the party nominees for governor. I'll have more on how they are reacting next. Welcome back. The Minnesota Republican Party says it did not support a so-called silent moment of prayer for Derek Chauvin, the convicted murderer of George Floyd, that took place at its state convention on Saturday. But despite lasting only about 10 seconds, the party's new nominee for governor, Kendall Qualls, is now being asked about it, especially since the delegate who says he's behind it is calling for a state retrial. Here's how Qualls responded to what happened this weekend today.
But I was surprised, actually, when it did happen. If I had to make a decision around something like that, I would have honored all law enforcement officers, number one. They've been made to be scapegoats for the last 8 to 10 years. And I would have had a moment of silence for officers that have fallen on duty. There are some concerns that people have about the Chauvin case. I don't know if that was the best venue to do that.
Now, today, we also heard from two other Republican candidates who will challenge Qualls in the Republican primary. MyPillow founder Mike Lindell and Philip Parrish. Parrish suspended his campaign for governor and filed to be Lindell's lieutenant governor today. They both told me that they were not in the room when the Chauvin motion was made this weekend, but Parrish had thoughts on it.
At this time, I can tell you Derek should be released.
Why is that?
His prosecution was not lawful.
What's your response to the Derek Chauvin?
I'm not responding to you. You guys are trying to do a hit job on us here for the. So there's my answer. Were you there? You asking me, was I in that room for that? No, I was not.
Lisa Damath has not commented on the prayer and has yet to say if she will run in the Republican primary. Jana.
Kent, I want to pick up on something that Kendall Qualls said. That was something I heard from two Republican strategists today when I had conversations with them about it. There could have been a moment of prayer for Jamal Mitchell, for the first responders in Burnsville who lost their lives. There are officers who deserve that moment. It's just an odd choice to do this one.
You know, and Nadeau said that to me as well today, that he pushed back on even entering this motion because he had said that this isn't a typical kind of venue to have moments like this, moments of prayer or moments of silence, especially at that point in the convention. But again, he says it wasn't his place to say it couldn't happen, and it certainly went forward.
Well, it's certainly taken up a lot of space today. Kent, thank you for your reporting on this, very thorough. We'll be right back.